Well, the time is just gone 8:54 a.m. On this day of Juma. Now, yesterday we had the opportunity of speaking with the leader of the Al Jama party, the member of parliament, Hanif Hendricks. And this came against the background of the press alert or the press release that they had dished out on the 14th of February in their response to the SONA debate. Now, there were a number of issues that were discussed with Hanif Hendricks. One of them was the question of the government supplying defensive weapons to Palestinian resistance forces. Now, I'm not too sure what Hanif Hendricks is actually onto about, but when you are getting necessities like food and medicine that is extremely difficult to get into occupied Palestine. Here we are talking about tanks and going into Israel through secret tunnels and secret routes. And I'd like to know where those secret routes are actually. And also at the same time, a number of other issues talking about the Muslim Marriages Bill, where he spoke in the most crude and most derogatory manner as mentioned in the press release, referring to the wives of Muslims and the children of Muslims as well, talking about, I don't know, pie in the sky stuff as far as the electricity crisis is concerned, blaming apartheid contractors, when we all know that there is so much playing out in the background as far as the ruling party is concerned, the corruption, the theft, the Guptas, diesel problems, the procurement. There's just so much, and I'm not too sure whether Hanif Hendricks is actually in touch with reality. But one issue that he spoke about was the whole question surrounding Hajj. And I'd just like to remind our listeners and our viewers this morning that a special mention was made about the Competitions Control Board, talking about failing Muslim pilgrims, paying exorbitant traveling fees and visa applications. Also, at the same time, he spoke about signing of international Hajj agreements, and then he made reference to an NGO. And I asked Hanif Hendricks, who is this NGO that you are referring to in your press release? And he says, I didn't want to say it, but in the press release, but he mentioned SAHUC, and he spoke about SAHUC charging just under 2,000 Rand for a visa. And we know this is not factually correct because I took him on this matter, and SAHUC is not responsible for issuing visas. So I don't know where the facts that Hanif Hendricks had got actually come from. And this morning, because he mentioned SAHUC, we are giving SAHUC the right of reply, and we have got the president of SAHUC, Shaheen Essop, with us. Shaheen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Juma Mubarak to you and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To you, Naya, to everyone in studio, to Salam Media's viewers and listeners, and Juma Mubarak to everybody out there. Shukran jazilan for the opportunity.
Well, Shane, upfront, I want to ask you is, were you surprised that Hanif Hendricks saw it fit to raise this issue in a SONA debate, which is actually far removed from what the president was saying in his State of the Nation address, but to raise this issue as part of his SONA debate and mentioning Hajj and the NGO SAHUC in particular? Are you surprised?
No, I'm not surprised because it seems tantamount for the type of person that he is, to take stabs at things that he has absolutely no knowledge about. It's very, very disappointing and disturbing that we have, leadership of that quality in our Muslim community that is leading the Muslim structures with absolutely no knowledge. You alluded to him mentioning that SAHUC charges for visas. First of all, SAHUC doesn't get visas. SAHUC gets, a quota allocated to the country, and based on, a fair, transparent, and equitable system of date and time priority, we put together a queuing system. If we just digress and go back a few years, or shall I say, maybe a decade or so, prior to this application system coming into its life, operators would basically be given quotas, and that quotas would then be sold to the highest bidders. Naturally, the highest bidders were repeat pilgrims because those were the business people of our country, and as a result, people would go for Hajj multiple times. And the poor person selling, samosas, kusistas, or the poor factory worker, or the teacher, or the ustad and ustada, they were left on the sidelines, not being able to go for Hajj because the seats were being taken up by the business people and the wealthy in our country. So we looked at this and we said that this is totally unfair. We've got to put some fairness and process into this equation, and as a result of which, we've queued people who have never been for Hajj before. The only repeat males that you'll find in the queue are those that are serving as mahrams. And the unfortunate situation is, if a female has made Hajj 30 or 40 years ago, she's made a Faraz Hajj, she can't go again because of the scarcity of quota that has been given to South Africa. So the fees that he may be alluding to are the service fees that you spoke about yesterday in your interview with him, where a fee is charged for the registration on the system, and that's once off. You'll probably be in the system for over 10 years, so bandwidth costs and other administrative costs are basically derived from that. And then the 1,650 rand, which is the accreditation fee, and that is utilized in the repatriation of services back to the pilgrim, be it at the airports in South Africa where the pilgrims depart, at the airports in Medina and Jeddah where the pilgrims arrive, and then also through the medical services that SAHUC provides in Medina, in Makkah, as well as in Azizia, and on the 5 days of Hajj. He alluded to the fact that medical insurance is being paid. That medical insurance has got nothing to do with the Hajj mission, because in the agreements with the Ministry of Hajj and with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, countries from around the world who come with Hajj missions must have a medical facility, because that medical facility must cater for the primary health care for your pilgrims. Now, pilgrims that have been to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia before will attest to the fact that, the medical care that they get, and it's not one visit that people come to. If we go back to 2018 or 2019, Inayat, people have been coming 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times to the clinic. Now, if you take that into account and you work out what it costs you to visit a doctor in South Africa, then that 1,650 rand has already been subsidized by SAHUC in, as many parts as you want to start stripping out that equation. Needless to say, if you go to the hospitals, now the hospitals in Saudi Arabia, if you're in Makkah, you're going to go to the Mustashfi Nur, which is in Azizia. 99% of the time, you're going to be faced with somebody who speaks Arabic or who speaks a language that you do not understand. Is it not better for you as a pilgrim to be met with people who have a language that you understand, so that there's an understanding and there's peace of travel, peace of mind in this particular regard? So we don't, see the need to defend the costs that we make, because that gets repatriated back. As you can see, I'm sitting in an office. This is not SAHUC's office. My day job is that totally different of my administration in SAHUC, together with the rest of my board. And Alhamdulillah, not a single member of the board or the executive of SAHUC take a salary from this organization.
Yes, but also raising an issue like this in a forum, like a response to a SONA debate. And for
No, it's
me,
out of line.
I'm trying to make sense of this, Shane.
There's no sense that can be made out of it, because you're not dealing with state of the nation matters. You're dealing with a matter that is, alhamdulillah, has been, reviewed, has been, refined in a great way. I'm not saying that SAHUC is perfect, but at the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves the question: if we look at Hajj administration and we look at Hajj services back from, the sort of early 90s going into the 2000s, the different iterations that we've gone through in terms of making sure that the service to the pilgrim is of the utmost standard that our Hujjaj and our Hajj operators can put together and SAHUC can put together, then Alhamdulillah, we are succeeding. I remind you, Inayat, we had a discussion about this some years back, where in 2005, 2006, after Hajj that year, there was 89 complaints against Hajj operators in the Gauteng region alone. Up to 2019, because from 2020 and 2021 there was no Hajj. Right up to 2019, from 2015 to 2019, we had 15 complaints countrywide per annum against Hajj operators. So does that not tell you that something has been done right in order to ensure that there's been an upscale in service, and the Hujjaj have come back very, very satisfied about the experience or the journey of a lifetime? Now, we have said this in the past and we continue to say it. SAHUC is not the sole responsibility for that. The responsibility for a great Hajj for the Hujjaj is good cooperation between Hajj operator, SAHUC, and the cooperation of the pilgrim.
Yes, Shane. The some of the other issues that were raised, and he speaks of the competitions control board failing the Hujjaj, paying exorbitant traveling fees and visa application fees as well. Just your response to that, a particular point that he raised.
I don't understand. Again, the man needs to first understand the process of Hajj before he makes statements. Approaching the Competition Commission has never come to our door to ask us questions relating to anything because SAHUC doesn't set the price of Hajj. We need to understand that there are static costs in the kingdom, and let's compartmentalize this. There are static costs in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, namely the 5 days of Hajj costs, the Tanazzul costs, and other fringe costs that the ministry and some of its sub-affiliates will basically put together. This year, that cost is about 6,500 riyals if you add everything together. Multiply that by the current exchange rate. Our rand dollar exchange rate has just gone to 18.20. Where we sit at this particular point in time, if you convert that into reals, it's about 4.9 or call it 5 to the real. So take, your 6,500 multiplied by 5, and you're getting close to a value of 40,000. That is static cost. That has nothing to do with the operator. That has nothing to do with SAUC. That has got to do with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. For your 5 days of Hajj, your food, your tanazzul, your visa cost, your insurance, and various other ancillary charges that they may have in that particular costing. Now you look at the airfares. Post COVID, South Africa has had a major disruption in the aviation process. If we look at the number of international airlines that have come to South Africa or that are still coming to South Africa, we're at a loss in terms of seats available, flying out of the country. So people who want to come back immediately after Hajj within maybe 5 days or 7 days after Hajj are going to pay a premium for their tickets, somewhere between the price of maybe 20 to 25 or even more. 1,000 rand for that. You add that to the 40,000 plus minus for the static cost, that's already 65 or 70. You've got to pay for hotels in Medina, hotels in Makkah, you've got to pay for accommodation in Azizia. That is quite exorbitant. We're seeing now in Ayat that during the Umrah period, prices are changing at a rapid pace. There's a significant demand and supply situation in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, both in Makkah and Medina, and prices are exorbitant. So it has nothing to do with people monopolizing or people manipulating pricing. If you look at what our prices or our Hajj operators' prices are like this year, there's a distinct attempt to try and get prices down. Yes, people are serving communities or parts of our community who want premium Hajj, who want middle of the ground Hajj, and who want budget Hajj. There are packages across those spectrums. Nobody says that you are forced to take a 175 or a 180,000 rand package. That is the difference in terms of why, when quotas are released, the right is given to the Hajj, to the Hujjaj, to go and determine which operator they're going to use and what price they want to pay for their Hajj. That way, it's a free market and the power is in the hand of the consumer.
Exactly, Shane. And in fact, just last night I spoke to someone who returned from Umrah, and he mentioned exactly what you are saying. He spoke about the exorbitant prices, and he says everything you need to do, you need to convert by five. I mean, he gave me an example. He says a can of Coke is now 6 reals in the kingdom, where at one point in time it never moved from the 1 real. So that's like 30 rand for a can of Coke. I mean, 50 reals for a burger, 250 rand. He said just the 2 weeks alone on food alone for two people, it cost him something like 20,000 rand.
We're not unique in the situation where inflation has crept into different countries. The war in the Ukraine has had a very, very big impact on Saudi Arabia because they import most of their, raw materials for food production and for various other aspects relating to, services in the kingdom. Fuel, for example, over the last 5, 6 years have gone from under 1 real, 33 halalas per liter, to almost 253 per liter, sorry, 233 per liter. So that in itself is a massive increase. So the cost of transport, the cost of moving goods from one place to the other is obviously going to increase. There's ripple effects that one needs to understand, and that ripple effects is going to be passed down to the end consumer. Hence, we see inflation creeping up, which was never a situation in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Yes. The other point that Hanif Hendricks raised was the Department of International Relations turning a blind eye by allowing an NGO to usurp Parliament's role in approving the signing of international Hajj agreements. Now, I know in the
Inayat,
past, Sahuk, you guys used to go sign the protocol, but that's why I say it's okay. Continue, Shane.
I think it's facetious of the man to actually make a statement like that, because at the end of the day, our government is not a bunch of juveniles. Our government and our Department of International Relations are very educated people in terms of the law and what's permitted and what's not permitted. And based on that situation, they would not have been party to the structure of SAHUC back in 1995, 1996, and over all these years would not have been involved or stood side by side with SAHUC in terms of it doing what it was needed. I go back to 2007, and one of the detractor organizations had basically taken this up with the government at that time. And they threatened the government to go to court, and the government said, please go ahead and we'll meet you in court. Now, on the DIRCO's website, 2001 December, the then Deputy Minister Aziz Pahad had posted a note that basically came out from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia after he had visited on a bilateral arrangement. And if you indulge me, let me just read this quickly to you. It will probably put a lot of things into perspective in terms of his claim. It says here, and I quote, the South African government has been advised by the Hajj authorities in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that new regulations have been enacted this year, this is 2001, to facilitate the flow of pilgrims to the holy sites in the kingdom. These new regulations are intended not only to improve the security of all pilgrims, but also to expedite the necessary bureaucratic process involved in the movement of millions of pilgrims who travel to the kingdom for Hajj and Umrah purposes. These new regulations mean that it will no longer be possible for individuals to travel on their own to perform Hajj. In terms of the agreement signed by the South African Hajj and Umrah Council and the Saudi Arabian Ministry of Hajj, only groups using travel agents registered with SAHUC will be permitted to obtain visas from the Embassy of Saudi Arabia. That was then, before visas have become online. The Department of Foreign Affairs, now known as DIRCO, now requests all people intending to perform Hajj this year, which is 2001, and all travel agents involved to accept these new regulations promulgated by the Saudi Arabian Hajj authorities and to work with SAHUC to ensure that the good reputation of the South African Hujjaj is maintained. Now, this is a public document, Inayat, and I don't believe that the then Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, or DIRCO, would have put this out in a public document if there was a problem with regards to SAHUC or an NGO signing that agreement insofar as Hajj is concerned, because that agreement is binding on the basis of Hajj preparations, Hajj administration, the movement of pilgrims in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the requirements in terms of medical vaccinations and various other aspects relating to that. It is not a bilateral agreement between one country and another, because it happens on an annual basis. A bilateral happens once, and those particular laws or those particular pieces of information in that bilateral are then promulgated for the duration of that bilateral, for 10, for 15, for 20 years, or for infinitum. Now, if you look at it, and the document that he signed is headed minutes of the meeting held between the Ministry of Hajj in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the South African delegation, and the names of the people that are on that delegations are basically publicized in that minutes as well. So it's a discussion about previous Hajj, it's a discussion about the new provisions or the new laws for the upcoming Hajj, and that is the agreement that is signed.
Yes. Shane, just one more thing. I accept the fact, and it's a good thing to have Muslim representation at government level in parliament and to address issues like these from time to time, to take care of matters that are of concern that impact on Muslims. Now, looking at the Al Jama party, looking at the leader, has Hanif Hendricks made any attempt to meet with SAHUC to discuss these issues, to get a better understanding of what is playing out in the Hajj space?
We met with, Hanif Hendricks about a year and a bit ago. A very brief meeting up here in Johannesburg. We basically outlined, a whole lot of processes. We outlined the history. We outlined the structures. And unfortunately, it appears as if somebody's got his ear in the Western Cape, and as a result, the things that we have informed him about seems to have gone out the window. So he continuously listens to, corridor talk, or to, whispers that come through his ears, and that's what he thrives upon in terms of making unfounded statements.
Well, I think that corridor talk we can vouch for, because some of the other issues I had raised with him was all relating to corridor talk. I heard from this one, from that one, from that one. And well, what more can I say, Shane? Let's leave it at that. But Shane, Jazakallah for that, and for your time with us this morning in clarifying. And I thought it was just fair that we give SAHUC the right of reply this morning.
Jazakallah khairan for the opportunity, Inayat. Always a pleasure to be on Salam Media. Do call on us again for any other information. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shaheen Essop, the president of SAHUC, with us this morning, the right of reply in responding to the Al Jama press release that was issued earlier this week. The time is just gone 9:15. We're going to go for a break. And as we welcome our listeners, our viewers on the various platforms of Salam Media, also One Nation 88.9 FM, we welcome you to the show this morning. We still have got Hasina Gori, Salam Media reporter, live out of Turkey this morning, the Competition Commission spokesperson on South African food prices, subject to investigation by the Competition Commission, and also an open day pilot in tourism training opportunities with a new airline. We'll be talking with the chairperson of Amro Aviation, Murad Ismail.